Welcome back to the Better Divorce Podcast. I know most of you know who I am, but just in case you don't, I'm Paulette Rigo, yes, the host of the Better Divorce Podcast. So sit down, get comfortable, and take a listen. And maybe you even want to grab a notebook. But what if the very fire in your belly that built your career is the same flame burning down your love life? Many of my clients don't know where to turn after divorce. And even at the beginning, you start to think about, how did I get here? And I don't want to ever live through this again. Well, today, my guest, Bern Mendez, and I will torch the tired dating scripts keeping brilliant post-divorce women stuck on repeat, so you never do this again. And we'll show you how to rewrite the neural code to attraction so you can crave what actually sustains you. So stay with us. And as you know, I am releasing the online course version of Better Divorce Blueprint. So be sure to grab your copy soon. The link is in the notes. Now, I want to make sure that you know that just who Bern is. So in case you're one of the 4 people on the earth who has not seen him on his YouTube channel, I'm joined by Bern Mendez, and you may know him, millions of views, blunt truth-telling on love and dating, and the silent wiring that picks our partners when we think we're choosing them, when actually they kind of choose us. We're going under the advice fluff today. We're talking nervous systems, blind spots, and the radical shifts successful women can make to finally choose intimacy that's calm, we want that, safe, and yes, delicious. So welcome to the show, Bern. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Paulette, for inviting me. I'm really excited to connect with you and your audience.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to dive right in a little bit about your personal story as to why you would possibly want to help women. I don't know if you have male clients too. We can delve into that. I'm assuming it's women. I probably shouldn't assume. And why you would probably want to do this work. Like, what made you say, I can help and I'm your guy?
I think, like many of us, it is just women at this point.
Okay.
It's been for the last 14 years. My story starts with my own personal pain. I was someone who, for many, many years, didn't know how to do this whole dating thing properly. I felt really insecure to connect with women. To the point where at the age of 17, I became really depressed, and not like a fun thing. It's just like a really painful experience. And then I connected to a mentor, and he showed me a different way out than the traditional route. And from that age, 17, I've been really hooked into how to help people create changes in a short amount of time, the traditional route. So as I learned that and went back into my life and started helping my friends and my then friends of friends and then little strangers, I really got hooked into the idea of how can I help someone to feel more confident about themselves. So it started like that. It started like an idea, a passion project. At some point, I had a challenging experience and also beautiful in some way of having my dad die in my arms. And I decided that's it. Like, this is something I need to turn into a career. So I just decided to go out and start sharing my message. And at that point, my message wasn't towards women, was towards humanity. But women were the listeners of my message, and they commented on my videos, and they reached out for connection. And upon many conversations, I found out that of all the areas of help that I could benefit someone in, this seemed to be an area where a lot of human beings, and in this specific case, women, were stuck in. So, getting the pain that I'd gone through and also the feeling of, I don't want people to go through this, I started deepening my understanding of this particular area and applying the skills that I've learned to help others and more like a life coaching arena into relationships, and then created my own method of working with women and figured out a few things along the way.
Well, I don't want to get off topic too much, but I
Sure.
didn't expect you to tell that story about your dad, but that has
Mm,
really left a profound impact on you. I've had only one time as something even remotely similar happened, but um,
mm,
did how did that, besides the obvious, how did that
sure.
affect you as far as giving you that tipping point to want to do this work? Was it sort of the witnessing of his soul, or like what was that
It was
profound
just so
moment?
many different things at once, Paulette. It was for one, it was the realization that I'm next in line. Like my
Mm,
grandfather died 2 weeks before, or 2 months, sorry, before he died. Then he died, and then like I'm the next person in the lineage, you know. And my whole thing was my father was an incredibly giving human being, challenged in some ways, but he died without fully doing what he loved for a living. And for me, the okay, like I can't betray him. I need to just step up and really do what I love for a living. That was part of it. And the other part, I tell my friends that I have two birthdays. You know, one is my actual birthday, the other one is the day he died. Because um, for me, I don't know, something kicked in me where I no longer had the excuse. I no longer felt afraid of reaching out to people because I had a message. It wasn't about me. It was about how can I help someone. And as I look more upon this, and we were talking about a little about your story before here, I think every powerful story I've connected with, and many of the listeners right now who are going through the divorce can be a horrible experience or it can be a birth of some sort, you know. And in my way of thinking, every death comes with a rebirth, and that was it for me. It's just like a way of me to give homage to him, but also to show my children that you could do something that you're passionate about, make a living from that, and not die with your music in you. So that was just like it went beyond my rational thoughts. I just had to do it.
Well, it's so true. Like there are certain things in life that happen to us, and when it's happening, we don't know why it's happening. But
Yeah.
it's enough of a kick in the butt, or a shock to your system. Some even say I got struck by lightning, like not
Yeah.
literally, but figuratively.
Hmm.
And I became a birth doula in 2011.
Wow.
And I was only a birth doula full time for 5 years, but it really made an impact on me. And it was sort of the
Mm.
opposite of having the honor of witnessing a life coming into the world
Yeah.
and being I don't know, honored, but more than that, it's really this profound gift to be present in the room. And obviously, I had three of my own children, and I was present in the room when I gave birth to them, but very different experience than when you're a fly on the wall or you're a professional in the room and you're really like,
Yeah.
you've got that lens into that a family being born. And I know on the opposite end, I do have a friend, believe it or not, she's a death doula,
Yeah.
who does it on the other, end with that. So, yeah, I just wanted to, find out what
No,
happened.
I mean what you're saying is so beautiful. I mean, there's tears in my eyes right now because there's chills right now going through me because I there's some very similar experiences. Like I remember being the first time my first son was born, and not the first time, the time my first son was born,
The only
and
ones, thank God, yeah.
the experience of a soul filling up the room in one instant, my life changing. It was such a surreal experience. I will never forget it. And then having that experience of my father passing away, my brother, it was almost like a birth. You know, when somebody's saying push, but somebody's saying let go. It's so
Yeah.
similar. You know.
Wow, that's the quote of the day, my dear. Yeah,
Yeah.
that one. So, on to our topic of dating and
Sure.
relationships and marriage. But, I do find everyone's backstory is incredibly vital to
Yeah.
their mission. Like, what are you here for? What is your purpose, your calling, your longing? How do you serve? And also for those that haven't found that yet, that's frustrating. And sometimes I see that in relationships dying when
Mhm.
one person really is on a mission to discover their calling, their longing, their purpose, their dharma, call it that. And the
Yeah.
other is just like, I just get up, brush my teeth, go to work, and go home. And nothing wrong
Yeah.
with that. No judgment on my end. I'm probably
Sure.
one of the least judgmental people, although I have my moments. But on the other hand, if you're in a relationship where it's not congruent, where one partner dating or engaged or married, and divorced,
Yeah.
and you're really not on the same page with that, the trajectory and the paradigm is completely, like a battery, polar opposites. You've got the negative and the positive, and they're just they don't attract. It can
Yeah.
really kill a relationship. So, with that said,
Sure.
you you do have this really profound way of saying that the nervous system often picks our partners before our mind does. Can
Uh
you
huh.
walk us through how that hijack happens and maybe how a person could retrain
Yeah.
themselves or their system from craving what's actually healthy instead of what's unhealthy for them?
Absolutely. Well, think about it this way: whatever you experience during childhood, and typically is between 0 and 2, the most important part of it, and then all the way up to 6, is what your nervous system learns to interpret as home. So the way I like to describe it is a thermostat. Imagine that your thermostat in your house is set at 70 degrees, but maybe 70 degrees for you is something that is disrespectful, and it's dismissive, and it's abusive even, and there's shouting, and there's inconsistency, and that's your thermostat, right? The way you wire within internally is for that type of connection. Now, you don't like it, you don't appreciate it, but it feels somewhat safe. And let's say that you grow up and you decide to create an amazing relationship with someone, and lo and behold, you connect with someone who there's some just magic in the way. I mean, a lot of my clients say, "This guy's just some magic in this guy." Cool, tell me more about him. And there's not anything very specific other than just a feeling. And that
Mm,
feeling, many times, is a thermostat that relates back into the way their wiring is set up. So they may connect with someone who is healthy. Let's say this is a person, in this case of my clients, it's a man who is maybe respectful, and he's not jumping the gun to move too quickly. And he's more laid back, but still pursuant in a way that's healthy, not love bombing. And that feels boring because the nervous system interprets that as like, yeah, there's a dissonance between what you're sharing with me right now and what I interpret as my. So maybe this is 90 degrees, and versus 70. So sometimes after a lot of pain and sometimes after a divorce, you recognize that it's time to rewire what that thermostat is like, not consciously but unconsciously. And a lot of it has to do with taking some time first to understand that doesn't mean you're broken or there's something wrong with you. I think there's a big stigma in society that if a marriage fails, even the word failing, didn't fail, it just didn't work out, and sometimes it's the best thing that can happen to both of you. So when something like it happens, to take the time to really figure out what happened, what's your share, what is the other person's share, and then from that place to get a chance to, I mean, the lack of a more fun term, regulate your nervous system. Like really learn how to do that, and then connect with people in a way where you get a chance to take longer to get to know them, take
mm,
longer to date them, take longer for physical contact, take longer, definitely take longer to have sex. And through that, and not just doing it with one person, perhaps having more than one person you're dating at a time, get a chance to really feel what does it feel like. And when you catch yourself obsessing about someone, maybe get some perspective or write things down where you get a chance to, okay, this, I'm obsessing about this person, but how do I feel in his presence? Or how respected do I feel? Like when you get a chance to really be more scientific about the whole thing, and then spend some time with more energies, meaning more people, then you get a chance to really take an objective look to what is going to be sustainable for you versus what feels passionate and right. I think there's a lot, people talk a lot about optimizing for, I don't know, some qualities like kindness. And I mean, most people at the end of the day, when faced with something they haven't experienced in a long time, they are tweaking or optimizing for excitement or for a feeling of intensity. And it's hard because when you haven't, I mean, the analogy I gave is if you've been in the desert for, I don't know, a couple of weeks and not drinking water, and somebody brings you a glass of water with dog urine, I mean, if it's between that and nothing, you'll drink it. But if you have multiple options, basically, and one is a bottle of Evian water next to that one, then there's a choice to be made. And that's what can happen if you slow down, if you get take more time to know someone, if you get more time to know yourself, if you develop a strategy that is not just based on it's going to happen. I think people give a lot of bad advice, like it's just going to happen when it happens. No, it won't. Not this day and age. Or it might, but you might be on a 10-year plan, and nobody wants to be on a 10-year plan. So there's intentional ways to see what your blind spots have been, so you're not going making the same mistake again. And then when faced with that challenging situation where you're about to make the same mistake, almost like diffuse it energetically,
mm.
so that you don't fall for the same mistake, calling it excitement or passion or magical qualities in the other person.
Yeah, I'm nodding if you're listening to the audio. Going back to that thermostat analogy,
Sure.
um, um, it does take some what I like to call discerning quality or
Uh-huh.
discernment to know when 68 degrees is right for you, or 70 or 72, or maybe down in
Yeah.
the South where I live, 78 is just fine because when you go out, it's 100. So
Yeah.
68 is like you're dying, you're in a meat locker. Whereas up in the North,
Mhm.
68 degrees, it feels warm because, well,
Yeah.
inside it's, yeah, a temperature I'm not going to mention because I'm allergic to snow. But
Mhm.
to be able to discern and adjust that thermostat to you, and be courageous enough
Yeah.
and resilient and strong enough to say, this thermostat, this temperature isn't right for me. And I
Mm.
know we're doing this analogy and it's brilliant and I love it, but
Mhm.
it isn't a matter, or is it, I guess is the question as we're
Uh-huh.
talking, discerning it, uh, you know, um, just many times, my clients are brilliant. They can negotiate mergers, but
Yeah.
somehow they can't negotiate their own heart out of chaos. And
Mm.
seeing, that it is adjustable. That you're not just stuck with the damn temperature on
For
the
sure.
wall.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, there are times you're in a restaurant or somewhere you're
Yeah.
friend's house, you just can't run up and change the thermostat, although some of us would like to. But when you can, in fact, control your environment
Mhm.
emotionally, energetically, and temperature, financially, spiritually, legally, judiciously and parentally. I mean, there's every aspect of your life because divorce
Yeah.
affects every aspect of your life.
For sure.
Everything changes. I see that many people just feel like, well, that's the way it is, and
Mm.
I'm stuck with it. It's
Yeah.
I'm in this obligation, and it is, and they have a really hard time negotiating their way out of that chaos. So maybe you can, I don't know, does that have anything to do with the work that you do? Why they do
Yeah.
that?
I mean, typically when somebody connects with me, they're either starting to date or they want to, but they're not sure how, or they're
Okay.
in the middle of something really not fun that they want to get out of, and they're not sure if they should get out of it or not. And that's more like what you're describing right now. Somebody who's maybe experiencing that level of pain, they're not sure what's happening, but they know that it doesn't sit well with their heart. And sometimes it takes years. I mean, so the first thing I'll say to that person is, you are like every other human being. Sometimes it takes many, many years. I mean, even in statistics for divorce, I mean, couples go through a lot of pain before they finally decide to do that, sometimes after therapy and lots of conversations. But if you go through that experience where you're not sure what the problem is, but you definitely recognize the symptoms. So we can talk about the symptoms. You don't feel appreciated about your partner. You feel gaslighted. Somebody's saying things to you that are not true and trying to convince you that the reality they are experiencing is your reality, and that's a sign that something's not well. When you can't be yourself in front of the other person because the other person gets really upset, or they do a little tantrum, or overtly or covertly, when you are constantly criticized by someone, and not uplifted, when that person can't hear what you have to say because you're expressing your truth, and that person is defensive the first second and then turns it around and then says five things that you're doing wrong, and that's why he's so. When that happens, that's a sign that something's not working. And so the best advice I have for someone like that, because it is very, very difficult to recognize what's happening, and I wouldn't advise for someone to try to self-diagnose what's going on. I'd say get some help. And it doesn't mean coaching necessarily. There's therapeutic help. There's groups out there for people who are financially challenged. There's codependence. I mean, there's many types of groups
Right.
where you can get a perspective for somebody else, witness other stories that maybe resonate with yours, and then through that wake up to the realization that this is either unhealthy or very unhealthy or extremely unhealthy. And then from there, start getting some resources to change things. I think it's the cookie jar example. No, you're inside the cookie jar and you can't read the label on the outside. That's kind of what this is like in some ways. You just more than hoping that people understand exactly what's going on, it would be more feel where your heart is. And if things don't feel well and it's been a while, that's a good sign that maybe some perspective or outside help would be. I mean, you know what, in your work you do, you can save someone hundreds of thousands of dollars and 10 years of their life, but it requires that very vulnerable raising of hands saying, I need help.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I created Better Divorce Blueprint, because I don't start with the lawyers. I start with the
Mhm.
nervous system stabilization and
Yeah.
really getting to know yourself as a person. It's a
Yeah.
new chapter. And yes, we do take the old self with us, but a lot of that is left behind. And I don't mean to discard people. It isn't about, what's the word, alienating or
Uh-huh.
disregarding people. That's not what I'm saying. But really knowing that you can feel safe in your own body, by
Yep.
knowing who you are, getting in touch with your core values, uh, even doing like those silly, I hate to use the word silly, but they seem silly until you do them, but really understanding the values of what you hold near and dear, a wheel
Mhm.
of life, all the different aspects of your
Absolutely.
life, what's working and what isn't working. Because
Yeah.
when you are divorced and you need to have this conversation about, dating, you
Mhm.
don't want to have the same attraction pattern where you're
Yeah.
now attracted to the same type or hate to use the word type, but personality, right?
Yeah.
Demeanor that's going to have you end up in my office again. I'm the one
Yeah.
professional in the world that never wants a
Mm.
repeat client.
I mean, I'm the same way.
I'm not a hairdresser. I'm not like, see you in a month.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even with dating, you're like, oh, it doesn't work out. Let's try something different. With me, it's like, wait, when my phone rings and it's a familiar name and number, I go, oh, damn, I hope it's just to tell me they miss me and all is well, because
Yeah.
it's not something you want to repeat. It just isn't.
Yeah, and part of that has to do with understanding what your attachment style is. Something as simple as that. I mean, there's a catchphrase for that, but I think it really matters because if you don't understand what that is, then there's going to be so many problems you go through, and you'll think it's just fate, and it's the way you are acting or responding, or the way the other person's acting and responding. But having a framework of understanding, it's
Mhm.
like playing chess and knowing the rules of the game and knowing the patterns and the moves that create that winning strategy versus just, oh, there's pieces moving and I just checkmate against me all the time. So I think something as simple as taking the time to understand what your attachment style is. And it's not set in stone. I mean, you have different parts of each. So understanding things like that are really helpful. We live in a society, Paulette, where we have the highest hopes of what maybe a relationship could be like, spiritual, emotional fulfillment in life. We want to self-realize through a relationship in ways that we have never been possible in human history until now. But the level of skill that we have is very similar to the one our parents had, which is not saying much. So there's a lot. I mean, there are some people who will experience that, but the majority of people won't. And it's not going to be because it's not possible, but because they thought they were sold into this narrative or this myth that it should be natural. There is nothing natural about the level of love and intimacy we're seeking right now. Nothing. It's very, very specific to us and to our level of consciousness and to the abilities and the luxuries we can now experience in life. So to be able to learn some of that makes the biggest difference in the ability to actually experience it, resonate with someone else, recognize if they're a good partner or not, and then create something sustainable. And it's a lifelong process. Like couples should never stop learning how to be better in a relationship. It's like anything else. Like people learn throughout. I mean, therapists learn their entire career. They're required to. Doctors the same thing. But relationships, like nobody teaches anything. People don't learn anything. They wing it, and they're just confused as to why it doesn't work. And dating is the same way. If you have a strategy and you know how to create attraction, how to elicit basically truth in connection with somebody else, if you're able to have a strategy that will help overcome the substantial odds that women in midlife face these days, which are not insignificant. They're very, very challenging, statistically speaking. So if you have a strategy and you have the heart and you have the skills, then now you have a shot of getting what you want.
Brilliant. So, is there, maybe I should have it be a more open ended question, is there one little daily micro practice that women can use to start rewiring these attachment or attraction patterns?
I'd say something as simple as learning how to consciously breathe. I mean, breathing, you start life with a breath and you end life with a breath. And it's a thing that's going to sustain you. And it's something you can do in the middle of a meeting. You can do in the middle of a date. No one's going to say you're breathing weird. And you don't have to stand up and shout and do jumping jacks. I mean, there's multiple things you can do. You can cold plunge, you can meditate. But the most basic element of rewiring is breathing. Because when you breathe differently, then you get a chance to activate a different part of your nervous system that allows you to use this part versus this part here, which is basically the lizard brain, for lack of a better term, just more colloquially speaking, and make much better decisions. So if you're in the middle of a challenging situation, you feel triggered by something, maybe the guy didn't text you when he said he would, and you're about to send maybe a painful message or go into a loop of he doesn't love me, he's with somebody else, like something like that. It could be really triggering. Is get the time to breathe. And the most simple pattern is 4-7-8. Inhale to the count of 4 through your nose, hold for 7 seconds, exhale for 8 seconds. So 4-7-8, you do maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of those. There's a different you that will be making those decisions. Something else that's very practical that can help is Brené Brown talks about this. She calls it a shitty first draft. So write all your thoughts in that moment. You're feeling triggered. You're feeling in pain. I will never find this guy. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm past my prime. All the bad ideas that you could ever think of, just write them down uncensored on a piece of paper. Don't stop until you feel your hand is tired of writing, and then let it sit for a little while. Go breathe. Go do something that centers you again, and then come back and review it, and maybe catch a few holes in your plan, and then write a better draft. Maybe write a gist of what's the truth behind that, so that you could, with your, it's almost like you're training your brain. This is what I used to think. This is what I now think, and you're making a conscious choice from a more relaxed state. And that's, you do it a few times, then you'll start, next time you start thinking those thoughts, the first thing you'll say is, well, I remember going through this before. I remember how I felt after I, and now you start going there. It's like you have a new, you're starting to pave a new road to get you where you want to go, instead of going to the same old 10-lane hyper highway that gets you to feeling in pain.
You brought back a funny memory. I don't know if it was a book or a podcast or a phrase that came out maybe 20 years ago, and it was, he's just not that into you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like in those ruminating thoughts, right? Or
Yeah.
repeating thoughts, right? I guess he's just not that into me.
And sometimes it is true.
Maybe. Don't know.
Sometimes it's true that the person's not into you, and sometimes sometimes that activates a level of obsession in people. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to Las Vegas and you've ever seen what people do in the little slot machines. The thing people do in those slot machines, I mean, the way they work so powerfully is because there's a concept behind those slot machines that's called variable reinforcement, intermittent reinforcement, which means you don't win every time, you don't lose every time, you win, but you don't know when you're going to win. So you might lose a lot of money, let's say $300, you win 20, and your brain gets tricked into, I'm going to win more, so you keep playing that thing. That same thing happens when you connect with someone who is inconsistent. You find him attractive. He's seems emotionally open. He's financially set. That almost like that's a trifecta that affects a lot of women. Think, okay, there's something here, and then the guy's not connecting with you all the time. He messages you good morning a couple of days, sets a pattern in, forgets about you for a week, and then comes back. And you give him entry to your life again, just like, hey, like nothing happened, just reappears into your life. Or maybe has a really powerful date with you and tells you how beautiful you are and how incredible the connection is and how he's never felt that way before with someone. And then next day you connect with him and he's like aloof and not connecting with you. There's something that happens. There's a part of your nervous system that gets activated with that. And they've done experiments with rats that basically mimic our nervous system, where if you get a little rat and that rat puts a little pellet and they get food every time, doesn't happen. When the rat gets food every now and then, the rat gets addicted to the pellet, to the pulling the lever, which means people get addicted in many ways to people who are inconsistent. That's the whole breadcrumbing thing. Why it's so powerful is because your brain is hoping for that. And there's a lot of things happening inside your nervous system, from dopamine being released to finally, when you connect with that person, oxytocin. Like it's just a whole cycle. But the more it repeats itself, the more ingrained the pattern becomes. So,
And
yeah.
it's a chemical reaction. It's that whole dopamine hit, why people
Yeah.
can sit on video games for hours, if not days, and social media, scrolling, 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 because they get that constant bombardment
Yes.
of whatever it is, adrenaline, right? So,
Yeah, but in this case, it's worse because it's a dopamine, and then you don't hear from this person. So the cortisol and adrenaline rise. That's a power that it intensifies everything, and then finally the person connects with you. Dopamine release again, so that the cycle of addiction it's a real thing. It's not just an imaginary thing. So the more you understand that, the more you're able to plan even the way you date differently. Like if the dating apps are exactly the same way.
Right.
Sometimes you get a genitalia from someone you never want to see ever in your life, and sometimes you get an awesome guy messaging with some, so you never know what you're going to get. And so the way it's done is, if you don't structure it in such a way where you maybe have a couple of periods a day, maybe morning at some point, not when you wake up, and evening, if you're just all day reactive to that, you become hooked onto them, and then it feels, you get the low. It's just an addiction as well. So the whole thing has to be, in my way of thinking, for it to be sustainable, informed by this way of regulation at every aspect, dating, using the apps, even after you date someone, just what really happened, like getting a little bit, maybe 5 minutes to just write down how you felt, so that when you feel called to see this guy again, and you wrote, I felt dismissed by this man, but you feel the hook, you can read your own words or record a voice memo for yourself, and like maybe think about it again, you know?
Yes, yes, and yes. And coming from someone who got married way back in the 80s when there were no dating apps, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and then remarried now. I don't remember how long I used a dating app, but it was a very short period of time. And I think I went to the movies once with one guy and a dinner with another, and it was not my idea of a good time. So
Mm.
I can't be that dating expert. I am not that. When as soon as my clients ask me about dating, I usually go, that's not really my jam. So, and I find that also Main Street dating advice is
Mhm.
burning out smart women. They feel this bombardment of having to keep up or play
Yeah.
the game or show up as Miss whatever she is.
Yeah.
And that's really hard because it used to be different, back before we had that cycle of addiction, as we just discussed.
Yeah.
Is there something missing or is it about how they can manage that pivot from feeling like they're having to perform to
Uh-huh.
finding partnership?
Yes, you brought a couple of things. One is that there's a lot of, I mean, like with anything, there's millions of channels with advice. Many of those are bad advice. It's like a good friend. You can have the best friend give you bad advice. It's still harmful to you. And a lot of it has to do with those games, playing the games, and uh, almost like a just gimmicky way of connecting with someone, manipulating them into connecting with you or wanting you or obsessing over, like, just all that stuff. I don't think works. The second part of your question, I think, has to do with how do you, how do you make sense of it, and how do you shift that feeling of overwhelm, perhaps, of when you're about to put yourself in the dating space again. I think has a lot to do with getting the getting the time and space to connect with someone, knowing that, I mean, I'll backtrack a little bit and say it this way, because there's the advice of just be yourself, and that's not bad advice, but it is bad advice in some ways. Because who is yourself? There's a cynical version of you. There's an expressive version of you. There's a relaxed version of you. There's a version of you that's more abrasive. So, which version of you are you showing up with? So, my whole thing is, if you being a version of you that you feel excited about, a version of you that you feel compelled to, if you saw yourself from across the room, you'd say, oh my God, what a human being, I want to connect with that person. If you're being that person, and the person in front of you doesn't want you, then there's 4 billion human beings of the opposite sex in this world that are potentially more of a fit than human being. So I would say, when you connect with someone, and there's that need to perform, perhaps, is the clearer you are with your signal, the more quickly you'll find your partner. Because if you're kind of like manipulating yourself a bit into, and I understand why, I'm not criticizing it, we all do it in some ways, but if that's the core of how you're connecting with someone, maybe not divulging the truth of who you are, or maybe being less clumsy, if that's something that's cool that you feel excited about, or being less musical, or whatever it is that you're hiding, it's making the person that would be a hell yes type of partner for you take a lot longer to figure it out, to the point where they might miss you. And the person that would self disqualify himself from the connection, maybe staying a little longer. So if that's why I'm a big proponent of expressing who you are. I'm obviously within reason. There's different levels of vulnerability you express when you're dating, but expressing who you are and what you want, what you're about, what you love, what you hate, it's important. Because if the person says yes, then great, continue connecting. If the person makes it a deal breaker, then I'd rather you find that out in date number one than date number five, you know? So asking powerful questions early on is so important. I connect with lots of clients who feel very scared of asking the question, what are you looking for in a relationship? You know, so I'm going to intimidate him, or he's going to think it's a lot of pressure. If the guy thinks it's a lot of pressure that you're asking that question, then he shouldn't be dating you, because you don't want to waste your time or his, right?
Why waste your time? I mean, my audience
Yeah.
does not like tactics and games. They're
Yeah.
busy people. They tend to have families, children, jobs, spouses that they're trying to manage through co-parenting, parallel parenting, and dare I say, counter-parenting. And
Yeah.
now that they're kind of wrapping all that up or trying to move into the next chapter, it's exhausting to think about creating profiles and babysitting, forgive the word babysitting, but
Yeah.
apps, and like you said, not being on it 24 hours, but selecting
Yeah.
a certain time of the day to check in and communicate, maybe set up a call or a date, what have you. But
Mhm.
um, there's a lot of pressure out there to
Yeah.
keep up with the Joneses and be perfect, and not
Yeah.
really finding someone that is right for them.
Yeah, I think right now in this society, not finding someone is seen as a sign of failure, and women feel even more pressure than men on that. You know, culturally. So if I don't find there's something wrong with me, what I would say is take the time you need to find that person, because you want to make the right choice. Take the time you need to date more than one person, also, so that you can see and feel in real life who really shows up for you. You know, the whole resume thing is real, where you'll see a profile, or a friend will tell you about someone, and on paper sounds great, but there's that connection. And by the connection, I don't mean the sparks are not flying from the first moment, because I don't think that's necessary from the first moment, but where there's really maybe a sense of, this person doesn't get me, and it's been a few dates, but everything on paper sounds great. So there's a lot of pressure on that front. There's a lot of pressure on the whole even definition of a failed marriage. I don't think people fail in marriage. I think people make decisions that will inform their next decisions, you know, and it's all, if you want to, as we discussed earlier, it's all a birth of some sort. Now, you don't want to continue birthing things that are not necessary, but if you went through it, you can take as much juice as you want from it as you can, so that you can be a better partner. You can be more expressive in what you communicate and more clear about your needs. Also, more specific in what you ask the other person, so there's no misunderstandings. I think there's a lot of room for someone who's gone through something painful to know that it doesn't have to stay that way. That there's always a second act. There's always, I mean, that's the only reason you watch a movie, for the second act. You know, the movie where the girl gets the pony and then marries the prince, like no one watches that movie. And then the happily ever after with no pain in the middle, who watches that? You know? But the movie where you lose yourself and you have to find yourself again, and through the finding of yourself again, you become a better human being. That's a whole hero's journey experience that I think everyone in this podcast is maybe going through at some extent. So just being really aware of that you're on your journey, you're on your right time. There's no pressure of when you need to do this. When you want to do this, there's ways of doing it that can accelerate it, obviously, but there's no pressure as to when this has to happen.
Mhm. I'm so glad you brought up the hero's journey. As I'm nodding, I spent a month in Bali many years ago when I was writing a book and learned all about the hero's journey, and it was really life changing. We all do have that journey,
Yeah.
and many of my clients are, dumbfounded, shocked when I tell them that 85% of divorcing people are remarried within 5 years. And
Mm.
how do you go by divorcing to remarried without dating? I mean,
Mhm.
your significant other, your new partner, your new whatever you want to call them, connection, isn't going to fall from the sky, Bern, right? They don't
Yeah.
fall from the sky. I used to say that to my kids all the time. I want a blank, and I would say, it's not going to fall from the sky.
Yeah.
Let's come up with a plan. But then I also see that these very educated, strong, capable women start to complain, or turned off by the
Uh-huh.
more stable, emotionally available men, because they
Mhm.
see them as boring, and
Yeah.
they're really wired to wanting that, like, well, I want them
Bad boy energy.
excited, right? I want, and everybody wants, nobody wants to be in a new relationship with a puddle of mud, but
Yeah.
on the other hand, not everything needs to be a nuclear war.
Exactly. I mean, that's a very true point. I think that you need to figure out for yourself what is it that you really want, right? What is the biggest wish you have? And if the biggest wish you have is passion and excitement, that will come with a cost. And the cost might be some level of instability, some level of maybe not being as seen as frequently as you want to be seen. And it's like you can't have surprise and which is one end of the spectrum, and then security. Like you either want, which one do you value more? So there's not right or wrong. It's just what are you optimizing for, right? But when you connect with someone and it's not the instant sparks and the passion is not right there, but there's something interesting about the person, and then you get to be more vulnerable and share more about yourself and then learn more about the person, then there's this felt, it's almost like a candle. A candle can last the entire night. A firecracker is going to burst into flames and then disappear after maybe 30 seconds. And that's the thing that sometimes, not always, can grow with time, which is connection. Chemistry can grow with time. I mean, the more vulnerability you have with that person who's safe, the more time you spend with that human being, the more you feel seen and understood by that human being, the more you'll feel for them. And it's everything that's happening inside of you. It's not even just psychology, it's neurobiology. All those things happen. Now, if you connect with someone and you really give it your best and it's not happening, don't force it. But I connect with, I somebody wrote to me this morning, and this is somebody who lives in France, and somebody who would have never married the guy she's with right now and had the child she did. I think she had the child at 40 something, if she basically went through her old ways. When we connected and she met this guy, and she kept hearing my voice, like, give him one more date. He's not so passionate. He's not my type. He's like, give him one more date. He did that a few times, and lo and behold, they're madly in love with each other, in a good way, in a healthy, sustainable way. They have a child together, something that she thought maybe would never happen again at her age. And all because she was able to not go for the instant sparks and go for the chemistry with time can grow. And that's something interesting to explore.
But let's get honest. I mean, things are different. Back in the day, people knew how to flirt.
Uh-huh.
You could make eye contact, open the door
Yeah.
to someone, say hello. Um, I love your perfume. Um, Nice shoes. Whatever. Like just
Hmm.
flirting. Like not being overtly like weird and
Yeah.
talky and like sexy or sexual, but just common courtesy. Ever since the internet and social media and dating apps, most people forgot how to make connection with
Mm.
human beings in person. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like I'm in my own little domain, you're where you are, I'm where I am.
Yeah.
But we're connecting, but many people like, oh, and then you see them in person or not. And that's another problem is people aren't
Yeah.
really who they are because they're
For
putting
sure.
a front.
Yeah.
And, chaos, when they feel that, it
Yeah.
feels like chemistry for a lot of us. There's that,
Yes.
like, so chaos, that's what chemistry must be. Now, they've also just come out of a chaotic marriage.
Yeah.
And not all of them, but many of them have had that dysfunction, the lack of
Yeah.
empathy, the entitlement, the exploitation, the disrespect, the lying. I could tell you story after
Hmm.
story after story of
Yeah.
horrendous things that people do to each other in
Yeah.
marriages. But that's not our conversation. But they're not looking for chaos. But
Mhm.
yet there's still that, well, how do I know? And like you said, you have to give it some time and learn to, I'm going to use the old fashioned term flirt, right? Like
Yeah.
women have to learn how to walk again and put on heels and look, I don't know, put together and professional. If you saw the way people showed up going to court, I want
Yeah.
to kill them. Not my clients, but what you wear, what you don't wear, what you say,
Yeah.
what you don't say, just the decorum and demeanor of going on a date or going to a restaurant or making a reservation. And yes, going to court. People don't even go to the bank anymore.
Hmm.
They've lost that human touch of shaking hands. Of course, we had to do the silly fist pump thing for 5 years because we're all going to die.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
there's this really weird dichotomy that happens in divorce when you're leaving a relationship
Sure.
and you're brave enough to even utter the words of "I'm thinking about dating," but then learning those skills again. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I think that the flirting is a very important aspect of dating, and I think that that touches on something even deeper, which is sensuality, right? I mean, you're a sensual human being. How do you connect with your senses in such a way that it's expressed? And flirting would be an expression of sensuality. If you're connected to your senses, they don't have to think too hard about how do I say it this way or move this way. It just naturally expresses through who you are. So one of the things that I help my clients do is reconnect with their feeling world, so that and also prime when you're about to go out, don't just go out, do something where you can be and express who you are, and then when you go out, the natural extension of that lingering, or that perfume that you put on, metaphorically speaking, it's a fragrance that people experience, when they connect with you.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm a big proponent of connecting with human beings in real life. Yes, apps work. They have their challenges, but they do work. But that's shouldn't be, if somebody's using that as a strategy, solely as a strategy, I mean, they can get what they want, but it's going to be very painful and not nearly as productive for someone. I'm a big proponent that dating can be a spiritual experience, a spiritual journey, or the painful mechanism to catch a guy or a husband or a wife. So if dating's a spiritual journey, then who you become and what you do enhances the human being that ends up being in that relationship. So learning how to go out into the real world, connect with people eye to eye, makes a difference. Being in the right rooms where you don't have to filter through all the human beings, because the room itself filter human beings who are more resonant with who you are, accelerates things. So one of the things I help my clients to do is to figure out what are the right rooms they need to be in, and what's the energy that would facilitate being in those rooms and connecting with the people that would be yes, I want to know more about you, not because they're trying hard, but because they're expressing their true essence.
Yeah.
And so that the flirting is part of it, the being more open to go out and create connections. And I understand everybody's busy, and so it's not like a second job type of thing. But if you do make some time, at least once a week, to go out there and create human connections, then even if you don't meet your guy there, even if you meet your guy online, the connection will be better online because of what you experienced. And also, for anyone who's listening right now, who's about to start dating, or who's dating right now on the apps, refuse to go on a date if you don't have a video call with someone, because you'll see a lot more in a context like this than just hearing somebody's voice. And
Sure.
the video thing is not to determine if the person's going to be the partner for life, or if that person is the most energetic or has the biggest resonance with you, but to rule out something that in the first 30 seconds of seeing somebody at a restaurant would be a, oh my God, what am I doing? And you would have noticed that in a 5-minute video call with that person, whether it's creepy energy, whether it's a very different picture from what they presented themselves, or something that just doesn't jive with you. Maybe this respect that you see in just blatantly show up in the way the person shows up. So you can, if you don't have a lot of time, then go on fewer dates, but go on better quality dates by having a little bit more of a safeguard. Kind of questions you ask before the date matter. The visual connection, in a video call matters. And so people are going to say, no, I don't do that. Refuse to go on a date with them. Like, have that be a little standard. If you don't have a video call with me, it's not safe enough for me to date you.
Exactly. When someone says they're 6 feet tall and you meet them in person, then they're 5'2". So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So a few quick to wrap up, because
Sure.
I want to be respectful of people's times, including yours.
Absolutely.
What an old dating rule that you would just throw in the trash forever? Something that we used to live by.
I mean, something like a certain number of dates is when you should sleep with someone.
Hmm.
I think that my recommendation for that is when you really know the person, where there's a friendship, when you're in an exclusive relationship, it feels safe. Then be have sex with someone. But I mean, don't make it about the number of dates. Don't even not even the number of months. I mean, just when there's enough time to where you can get that the person is really who they say they are. You've gone through a challenging time and through good times, and things are resolved, where the person's respectful, where you're not eliminating the risk, but you're minimizing the risk of connecting with someone, getting really attached biochemically with that human being. And then, as I tell my clients, finding yourself in a dark alley eating tuna from a can, not knowing how you got there. So when you take the time, you might never get to have sex with that person, but you made the right choice, because that person wasn't worthy or wasn't compatible for you to open yourself at that level where you might get really hooked into them.
So it comes back to that discernment, right? When you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So finish the sentence. Healthy love feels like what?
Home.
Hmm.
But home being a healthy place, not home being chaos.
Which is different for people, right?
Yeah.
Biggest attraction blind spot women have.
Biggest attraction. Ooh, I mean, I don't know the biggest one, but I'd say a very common one is um, not understanding their attraction blueprint, not understanding their attachment style, and feeling very reactive to human beings based on that lack of understanding. Feeling like people don't respect them enough, or people feel like people are pressuring too much, when in reality is just maybe them being activated a little too much. You know.
And what boundary mistakes do you see?
Boundary mistakes. Okay, stating a boundary in terms of this is what you should do. There's a lot of that going forward, or stating a boundary, which is not what a boundary is. Like, here's, you can do this, but here's my response. That's more like in my book what a boundary is, or having a boundary where you express it too late, but with a lot of force that's not required. There's a therapist called Terry Real that says there's nothing that loving kindness can't do better than something forceful. So being firm and kind, that combination will get you most of what you want in life. You don't have to go through. You don't have to shout, or I mean, sometimes it's necessary if your life's in danger. But being
Right.
able to, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I need, and it's okay if that person can't meet it. But coming from a place of there's a consequence when the boundary is broken. A lot of boundaries are expressed, and then boundaries broken, and then nothing happens, so you reinforce that that's okay.
I see a lot of dancing around the topic, but not really hitting it. And the
Yeah.
acronym I love is BIF, brief, informational, friendly, and final, meaning you're
Mm.
just kind of giving the information without a lot of fluff
Yeah.
and dancing around it, but you're bam, just throw the dart right at the bullseye, say it with conviction and compassion at the
Less is more, definitely. I
less
mean,
is more. Don't dance around it. And
yeah.
lastly, if you could
Mhm.
put one message on a
Mhm.
billboard on the highway for every divorced woman
Mm.
driving by, what would it say?
uh you can get what you want. You can absolutely get what you want if you're willing to take the time to learn the skills to get there.
Mm. Well, Bern, thank you for lighting this up with me and everyone listening. Your divorce is not the end of love. It's the end of a contract that didn't honor you. The
Yeah.
blueprint for what's next, I built it. Better divorce blueprint. Do not go alone, whether it's dating, lawyers, finances, co-parenting, domestic relation, financial affidavits, mediation. I could go on for hours. I won't. It's important that you know what you're doing. And Bern, what is the best way for people to learn more about you so they can
Sure.
be prepared for dating?
Great. You can go to my website, bernmendez.com, BERNMENDZ.com, and you can find my YouTube channel. You can take a quiz to find your attraction blind spot there. A lot of resources in that one page.
Yes, go to his YouTube channel. It's in the show notes, and grab your starter kit in the show notes too. And next time, make it better. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.